Hello, joining us on this episode of the Mortgage and Protection Podcast is Paul from Brick to Brick Mortgage Solutions, here to tell us all we need to know about house surveys and valuations. It's great to chat with you, Paul. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yes. Tessie, how are you doing?
Oh, good. I'm very glad to hear you're well. Yes, all good too. Thank you for asking.
Good.
Okay, so let's get straight into the questions that we've got here then. So first of all, of course, what is the difference between a house survey and a valuation? Does the survey include a valuation?
A valuation is basically to ensure that a property is suitable lending for a lender, is worth what it says on the mortgage application that we put in. Although they briefly look at the condition, it is mainly just on the size, location and characteristics. And that's what the valuation is. It's basic, really. A house survey is different. These are more detailed inspections and they look at minor things and also major structural aspects such as subsidence. They check for damp, presence of certain materials such as asbestos. These are then put into a report, but highly recommended they pick up on other issues that a basic property valuation won't, and they wouldn't notice things like that, or we wouldn't notice anything like that. So that there are differences on them. A survey doesn't include a valuation. That we can go into things as we go through this episode, but on terms of how with a survey including a valuation, there is a level 2 survey, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly. But on terms of level 2 survey, they also do a level 2 survey with a valuation. So that is a separate thing. That's the only one that comes with that.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, thank you ever so much for explaining that and breaking all of that down first of all. And yes, of course, we'll go into more detail as we go along the questions. Now, with all that in mind so far, let's follow on with the next 2 questions combined here. So, do I need both a survey and a valuation? Can I use the mortgage valuation as a full survey?
You can't use a mortgage valuation as a full survey because it's like I say, it's on the lender's basically just saying what it's worth and whether it's suitable lending for them based on that. On terms of whether you need a survey and a valuation, you do need the valuation because that's what the lender does to make sure it's suitable lending to eventually progress the mortgage application. But on terms of the survey, that's your choice, and basically it depends on how comfortable you feel and possibly how old the property may be, or some newish builds sometimes have things noticed. So I would also recommend a sort of survey on those as well to give you peace of mind. But on terms of having a survey and evaluation, it's for your peace of mind that a survey will be done. So I think that most people do prefer to have one, so they know that what they're going into, the biggest purchase they'll ever make, they want to make sure it's all fine.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Well, there we go. That makes sense, but some points to bear in mind as well. So for those that aren't aware, maybe you're doing this for the first time, who arranges the house survey, the buyer or the lender?
The buyer would arrange this. When we apply for a mortgage, we do normally ask someone to contact you if you want to go through the options of a house survey. There are different options available, and they can talk you through that. But the buyer has to arrange it, and like I say, we can put you in contact with those people if needed.
Right, okay, brilliant. So that answers that one clearly. Now, how much do surveys and valuations typically cost then?
Valuations with lenders are generally, they can be free. They can be £100. Some lenders may charge, but most of them are free. But on the survey, when you choose to have a survey, it depends on the type of survey and obviously where you go to get this completed. The price, the cost of these basically can be anywhere between £400 and £1,500, like I say, depending on the level you go for and who you go to for it.
Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea of how much a survey or a valuation might cost depending on the circumstances involved. Okay, so let's move on to this question. How long then does a house survey or valuation take? How long are the processes here?
A mortgage valuation normally takes around 10 to 15 minutes, whereas if you had a house survey, somewhere between 1 and 4 hours they generally take.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, there we go. So that gives you an idea of the time it takes there. Sorry, Paul, had you finished all you wanted to say there?
Yeah, that's completely fine. Yeah. Depending on the level of survey you go for, it can take anywhere between 1 and 4 hours, really.
Oh, right. Okay. So there we go. Now let's look at this question. So what happens if a survey finds problems with the property? So what happens next?
This depends on the severity of the problem. You can use this to either renegotiate the price with the vendor, or you can walk away from it and start the whole process again, really, depending on the severity of it and then what you feel comfortable with, really.
Mm.
It could just be something minor, whereas you might think, actually, yeah, I'm happy we can sort that out and then move in. Or, if it's something a little bit more major,
Mm.
like I say, you may want to renegotiate the price with the seller of the property, or if it's too major, you still could renegotiate it, or it might be too much work and you don't want the hassle, so
Mm.
you go away and look for something else.
Right. Okay. Well, hopefully that's useful to know there, and that ties in quite nicely with this next question. You touched on it there. Can I renegotiate the offer price based on the survey results?
Yeah, like I mentioned, you can, but only if the seller agrees with you and comes to an alternative purchase price that you can both then agree on. Sometimes the seller won't even offer a renegotiation, but obviously, hopefully they do, and then you have to decide what you want to do. You can assess the repair and how much it would cost, and then compare it against everything else on the property and if it's worth it.
Mm.
And then if it is, then that's all good. But otherwise, you can start again and look at something else if you're not happy.
Right. Okay. Well, that's something to be aware of there. Now, with this next question, you alluded to this at the beginning of the episode. So, what are the different types of house surveys?
There's a level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 survey used to be called a condition report. This is the cheapest one. It shows defects, but it won't explain how to deal with those defects. Generally, it's for buying a house in a good condition already and a pretty standard one. Level 2 survey, that used to be called a home buyer's report. And this is a more detailed inspection for a reasonable condition property, I would say, and with no additions such as any extensions or loft conversions, but it is a more detailed inspection and you get a report for that. On terms of a level 3 survey, this is the most comprehensive option, previously named a building survey. This is for potentially unusual properties, ones that need extensive work or that have had extensions or loft conversions or anything else. And it also gives you advice on repairs that need completing. So that's the more comprehensive, more in-depth version is the level 3 survey.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, thank you for talking us through those three types of surveys. Now, the next question, or the last question we have here, follows on from that quite nicely. You've touched on a few points. What is the difference between a home buyer report and a building survey? What does a snagging survey involve?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you mentioned the home buyer report and the building survey. Home buyer report's now called a level 2 survey, the detailed inspection, and then with for reasonable condition properties, and then the building survey now is known as level 3, and that's the one that goes into more depth. On terms of a snagging survey, this is on a new build home.
Right.
And this is finding things like poor quality and work that hasn't been finished, including things like plumbing, electrical, tiling, these things that aren't finished as standard expected to be compliant with building regulations on a new build. Some people get this done so that they're comfortable before accepting the property. Some people don't, but I would suggest some of the building work out there that is seen isn't to a standard that we would all like to see. And some of us probably wouldn't notice a lot of the things. So it is advisable to get a snagging survey done on a new build.
Oh, right. Okay. So that really is a key pointer to think about, something to consider then if you're looking at a new build. Paul, thank you ever so much for that. Now, we will actually be back, won't we, with a part 2. There's more questions to cover on this. But just before we go, do you have anything else you'd like to add, or shall we meet back on our part 2 episode?
We can meet back and all there's extra things to add on that.
Yeah.
If there's any, like as always, really, if there's any questions that pops into anybody's head after this episode, then just contact us and we'll see what we can do to help.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much for that, Paul. Hopefully that has proved useful there. Hopefully the next episode will too. So, Paul, we'll see you there.
Thanks again, Tessa. Speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Please note, your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up with your mortgage repayments.